Hello and welcome to the latest episode of Campaign Middle East on the Record podcast, where we speak to leaders in the region and across the globe about the key trends and challenges facing the brand and marketing industry. I'm Anup Oman, the editor of Campaign Middle East, and joining us today is Thomas Colster, Mr. Goodvertising himself, the author of The Hero Trap.
The Hero Trap,
Right.
yes.
The founder and creative director of Goodvertising Agency and a member on the International Advertising Association's Council of Sustainability. Thank you, Thomas, for joining us here today.
Thank you. It's my pleasure being in Dubai.
It's a pleasure to have you here. Is this your first time in Dubai?
Been there many times. Seen the changes over the years, but I always enjoy being here.
What's it like being on the Dubai roads right now?
You know what? I come from a country where I'm used to walking around, bicycling, stuff like that. I don't have a car, so sometimes I get a little bit frustrated, but it's okay.
Speaking of driving, is
Yeah.
it time, Tom, for us to move purpose from riding shotgun into the driver's seat? Or is CSR still stealing the spotlight and pretending to be purpose?
I mean, for me, the industry just needs to grow up. I think, unfortunately, we aren't really grasping the reality of the challenges that most brands are facing right now and the risk that's at stake. Even if you just look at CEOs today, most CEOs don't get kicked out because of lack of financial performance, but actually because they aren't living up to sort of the real reality of what
True.
society expects of them, right? And so it's just very hard to navigate this space right now. CSR, it's much more about, it's not so much about responsibility anymore. It's much more about looking at the possibilities. It's about driving an agenda that's more about actually the value that you deliver through that sustainability. So yeah, CSR has been dead a long time, and I think it's sad for those companies who still feel that is the name of the game
Important.
today. Yeah.
Interesting. What will it take to bring purpose back? We were having this conversation about generations before the podcast. We have moved from a generation of talkers to a generation of doers. We've moved from vocalizing our thoughts about this say-do gap that exists between what companies would like to say compared to what they actually do. Is this going to affect purpose? Is this going to affect it in a way that we're talking about a generation now that is going beyond to actually boycotting brands and calling them out on social media, on digital? Is this going to have a positive impact on brand purpose at some point?
Let's be real about it. Purpose is a little bit like Pokemon. Everybody is searching for it, but nobody really knows why. And I think the challenge in purpose has been that it's being treated like another advertising trend. For me, purpose is always relevant because for me, purpose is about creating meaningful brands. And what I mean by that is that the brands that play a meaningful role in our lives, they'll always be relevant. And so when people, Mark and others, are sort of criticizing purpose, I think they miss the bar in terms of what purpose actually really is. Brands are like people. It's a relationship between two people. And we have many different people in our lives. We have people we go to a sports game with. We have people we go out for beer with. And that's absolutely fine. Then you have deeper relationships, people you call when you're feeling down, etc. And for me, purposeful brands are those types of brands that nurture those strong relationships. So where the purpose movement went wrong, and I was part of that in the beginning of my first book, Goodvertising, was that instead of creating brands that were truly meaningful, we did what brands have always done. So instead of now being the ones that make a toothpaste that make your teeth whiter, they're suddenly the world's best at saving the world.
Right.
And so that's what I realized in my second book, The Hero Trap, was in fact that, wait a moment, brands need to take the backseat. Brands need to be the ones that enable, empower people's dreams, fears, etc. And that will always be relevant.
Is it time to get consumers into the driving seat then?
I think our industry hasn't. Again, it's sort of, like, I don't know if you have kids, but it's
2 dogs and 2 cats.
yeah,
But I
almost
understand.
almost the same, almost the
They
same.
tell
Yeah,
us. They tell
yeah.
us when things aren't going the right way.
Cats.
If they have food that they don't like eating,
Yeah.
the customer feedback loop is pretty obvious. Yeah.
And cats especially, right there. No, but I think the thing is that, it's almost like advertising feels like parents who don't want to let their teenagers go, that don't understand that these are actually people who have ideas, things they want to realize themselves. And I think it's been a fast accelerating trend from the first book, beginning of social media, to today, where, I mean, let's be honest, consumers can do everything themselves. And, I think COVID was an excellent example of how our commercial creativity was far outperformed by the creativity of regular people. There were so many amazing initiatives from regular folks. And I think we just need to realize, brands need to realize that they don't own the brand, people own the brand. And those brands who dare to open up will win. And I think this is where purpose comes very much into the driver's seat, because suddenly your brand is driven by something that people care about. Volvo around safety, Apple around creativity, Nike about athletic performance. Those are things that truly matter to people instead of just plugging products.
That's such a great headline. Brands don't own the brand. The people own the brand. I was driving down from Abu Dhabi just yesterday, and I was in the second fastest lane, and I came across this car in front of me that had its indicator on.
Yeah.
Right. I don't know if he intended to move into the fast lane or if he just had his indicator on for the, sake of it and
Yeah.
just forgot about it. But at some point, I reached a conclusion that either I have to overtake him or just signal him some way to say, can you just turn your indicator off?
Yeah.
And I feel that's such a good analogy of where brands are at. And I know this might sound a little harsh and with a spot of sarcasm.
Yeah.
Is it time for brands and the agencies who represent them to stop wasting time, money, energy on these mere narratives, on just virtue signaling of sorts, and if they cannot deliver on their promises in the long term?
I think there's a wake up moment in terms of how some of this stuff has been executed, and that's the problem about purpose right now, because when people criticize purpose, it's just badly executed purpose.
Yeah.
It's for me the drive and the change that we're seeing with agencies and with brands is they've been zigzagging. So everything you do that lasts a year and a half is never going to be authentic. So if you want to create something that's authentic, where it demands consistency, but secondly, it also demands one key thing. It is, in fact, that you as a consumer feel that, hey, wait a moment, that brand has actually created change in my life. And I think for me, that was sort of the wake-up call with the second book, was that I asked myself, with all these brands talking about purpose, who have in fact created change in my life? And that's a really good BS test for any brand out there who kind of go down the trendy way of crafting purpose. If you can't have that as a metric to say, have you actually created change? If you look at, an amazing legacy campaign like Dove, no doubt about it, that they have created change for a lot of young women out there across the world. Amazing piece of work. Volvo, do they give us all a sense of safety when we're driving that Volvo? Hell yeah. And they deliver on it through product, innovation, marketing. So purpose is not dead. Badly executed purpose is dead.
Interesting. One of the big conversations around purpose here again is, we're at the end of 2024, moving into 2025. And a lot of conversations that are happening right now is how much of the budget should be allocated to this. And what's the ROI on it? And unfortunately or fortunately, these are still conversations at the exco between the CMO and CFOs across the region. If we were to look at it from a metric perspective, from success perspective, from an ROAS perspective, um, how would you? I understand that this is a long-term aspect again, but for people asking you, what's the business case for purpose? What's your response?
I think already the exercise of dealing with it as it's a secondary activity is already wrong. This stuff should be fully integrated into the brand, be fully integrated into whatever else you're doing. I mean, there isn't really, for me, well done sustainability should be translated into normal marketing activities. What's gone wrong is this sort of crazy value crusade where you're like, believe in this and, are you willing to sacrifice this or that? Where for me, it's about delivering value to consumers. And what is value today is changing. So it is really about delivering on convenience, quality, and price. And so brands need to integrate it into whatever else they're doing. I think the ROI debate has always been there, right?
Yeah.
And there's two dimensions of that. There's the one dimension which is just if you are on, if you're traded publicly, obviously companies who think about ESG factors kind of take on the long beam.
Yeah.
They have a much more clear idea about the risks, the challenges that are facing them down the road, which is always great. I think what business wants, they want security. That's also why if you operate in a market like the US where politics, or the UK where, they're changing politicians as I change underwear, it's not good for business. So that's the one thing. On the brand side, for me, we know emotional advertising works. I think right now there's so much research that does showcase that purposeful advertising does outperform traditional advertising, and let me explain why that is. Because purposeful advertising talks about something that is relevant for people. They're not just talking about products. I mean, let's take Always as a Girl as an example. I don't know how many of the women out here would be able to talk about hygiene pads for more than 5 minutes. Suddenly, Always Like a Girl talk about something we could talk about while we're driving, when we're stuck behind that, So I almost feel like purpose is basically just about being more life-centric. It's about being a coach rather than a preacher. So the business case is there, both in terms of sustainability, but I think it's also there in terms of brand safety and brand legacy.
But is this also a need for us to, I mean, this goes back to the eternal performance versus brand conversation, right? Is there a need for us to pause, especially in a world of AI and data and analytics and all of this? We're looking at measurable outcomes, right? Effectiveness, so to speak. Is there a need to look beyond just our short-term metrics, short-term KPIs? What's Q1 2025 look like? What does 2025 look like? What does our year-on-year look like? And take a step back and keep these going in parallel. Keep performance, which is not bad per se, but keep brand as part of that conversation constantly.
I think if people have a 100% performance mindset, they shouldn't be working in advertising. They should go and work in a bank. I mean, honestly, like great advertising is about taking risks.
I agree. Yeah.
Hollywood, let's look at Hollywood. I mean, they spend slightly more than we do on one production, a couple of billion sometimes, right? They get it wrong a lot of times. A lot of times.
And
even
that's
though,
okay.
even though it's tried and tested.
Yeah.
And that's the magic. That's what, that's why I'm in this industry. It's because it's risky, it's fun. And I think if people have this mindset of, let's test everything, it's not going to give you the right answers. I think sometimes we need to go back to those days where it was about a little bit of gut feeling. But at the end of the day, as a CMO, he or she needs to be calling those shots and say, is this something I truly believe in? Is this something I can see drive conversations? Give it a shot. I mean, advertising needs to be more playful. I mean, so I feel we are on a sort of dangerous track in terms of thinking that we can predict everything. And now with AI and all these sort of personalities that you're testing again, it's not going to take our industry into a more exciting place. Quite the opposite.
I'm going to build on your quote saying advertising needs to be a little more playful. And for those brands that are doing it right, there are a lot of people doing purpose right, but I think they're stumbling on the hurdles of how to communicate that with their customers, how to communicate that with their audience. How do you show purpose in ad campaigns? Some have taken the purely data and analytics route. Let's show them the numbers, right? But there are others attempting to do this through tonality, through getting creative right, through getting humor right. Even is it the truth? Does the truth lie on either end, or is it in holding them together?
I think true purpose and purpose that really works is much more of a conversation. It's almost like you're passing the steering wheel over to other people and saying, let's have a conversation about diversity. Let's have a conversation about roads and traffic in Dubai. Let's have a conversation about, so the brand is sort of like a facilitator or a coach. And that's also why I said, like, ultimately it's about transformation. The companies who understand that this is about customer transformation are the ones who do it really, really well. I mean, take a company like Lego out of Denmark.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, you feel pretty good as a parent when you give the toys to your kid. The kids feel pretty good about playing with this because it actually develops them in a better direction. So I think that is the real test of this, is in fact that this is hopefully, I feel, a better way forward for marketing, because it's ultimately about leadership. I always say that the best leaders I had in my life are the ones who helped me accomplish amazing things. And if you look at some of the most valuable brands in this world, they are in fact transformative brands, whether it's the Red Bulls, the Nikes of this world, because Red Bull does play a role in my life.
Yeah.
It inspires me, it pushes me. And I think that's what we sometimes lack, is we forget the meaningfulness.
Okay.
And we tumble down this road where we kind of in that space where we're not really super relevant for anyone. And that's a challenge. It's kind of like those high school friends we sort of grow out of, or because, they aren't really relevant anymore. So I think the relevance comes from understanding that you got to be that coach that helps people towards achieving goals, having conversations that really matter, instead of being too product obsessed.
But these conversations don't necessarily have to be serious conversations. They can be fun. They can be just normal, like we or you. And is that relatability and authenticity just terms that we throw out there, or is it something that brands can go beyond the corporate to actually connect?
I feel, unfortunate, that there's a couple of mistakes that I see in the purpose space when it comes to a lot of this stuff. I mean, there's a lot of wasted money in purpose, in the sense that we preach to people who are already converted.
Yeah.
Preaching
to the choir.
Yeah. It doesn't make any sense. So you're running campaigns towards people who are already buying into your product, instead of actually thinking about how you can sort of expand that. Then there's so many ways you can sort of get on to that emotional superhighway that purpose can be, if really well executed. You mentioned humor. I mean, one of my all-time favorites is still a little piece of work for the Rainforest Alliance called Follow the Frog. Yeah. I mean, last year, one of my favorite pieces of work came out of this region, which was this sort of beautifully, quietly narrated commercial from IKEA, where even though the price is there on that little card, and you just have this slow panning shot over to the mom or the dad with the child, and then proudly second best. For me, that excites me. That's stuff that when we look at that, It reinforces what IKEA is very good at, sort of this humble Scandinavian approach. Yet they're still in fast fashion, which we absolutely are okay with because they're very honest.
Very cool. Any last words before we conclude? If there was one message you'd give on purpose, and I think that all brands in the region could benefit from, what would it be?
I feel let's not get stuck in words. I mean, too often we discuss purpose, we discuss sustainability, all this stuff. I actually want to sort of remove all that.
Jargon.
Yeah. For me, it's about building meaningful brands.
Brand.
That's brand is king. Brand is and for brand to be relevant, it needs to play a significant role in our lives, and that very easily becomes unlocked if you remove the focus from the brand to people. And one of the key questions I asked in the last book, The Hero Trap, was who can you help people become? Can you be the financial institution that pushes people towards financial literacy? Can you be a sports brand that pushes people to reach their goals no matter what it is? Then that's meaningful. And I think when people today in the digital space says people don't want to engage, or digital advertising isn't working because it's not relevant. There's no conversation. So I think that would probably be my last advice is don't make your brand the hero, but turn people into the heroes.
Turn people into the heroes. And that's a perfect way to end this discussion. Thank you for joining us on this episode of Campaign Middle East on the Record podcast. Stay tuned for more such wonderful conversations with leaders in the industry. Thank you, Thomas, for joining us here today.
Thank you.